Week 15 of the fantasy football season went absolutely stupid. We're going to break down all of our thoughts and the madness that came in Week 15, Round 1 of the fantasy football playoffs. On today's episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast, welcome in Lucas Wenzel, Cameron Lawrence with you tonight. Cameron, I will say it feels very good to have a first round bye, and I know you feel the same way after this week.
Yeah, I do. It is a bummer because two of my leagues where I got first round bye, I got Christian McCaffrey that I had to waste it, but I also had a lot of guys that we're going to talk about who did not do so hot in the this week in the fantasy playoffs. So I don't know if I would have been safe or not in either league, but yeah, having a first round bye is always nice, having that security.
It just felt good this week. The only problem is now I've got guys like Michael Pittman and Jamar Chase on my teams where I had a first round bye and I'm feeling great.
Yeah,
I can still compete for third, but it feels like the championship hopes are slipping through my fingers. And that was only like this much of the madness, the frustration that went on in Week 15. If you didn't see that on YouTube, I'm pinching my fingers about like a half a centimeter apart because Week 15 was absolutely madness. And we scratched the agenda and said we have to react to this week because round 1 of the fantasy playoffs was full of shocking heroes and players that made you just want to absolutely rip your hair out. And we're going to cover all of those players, the good and the bad, on today's episode. And I don't want to waste anybody's time. Let's dive on in and let's discuss some of those infuriating players, but also some celebratory players from Week 15 of fantasy football. And to be clear, we are not going to necessarily do any deep dives on the likes of Jamar Chase, who got injured, even though it now looks like he's probably going to miss the rest of the regular season with AC joint sprain in his shoulder. Apparently, he was in so much pain that he couldn't even get the MRI day of. I don't know if you've read that anywhere.
No. Wow.
That was concerning. So as a Jamar Chase dynasty manager, I am tilted. And Michael Pittman, obviously, just
whacked.
Do you think that was a dirty hit?
I mean, I don't think it was necessarily dirty, but I think if you're going to follow what the NFL has for their rule at this point, that was pretty much to the T of what they're trying to get rid of.
That's exactly. I saw a lot of people like, no, that wasn't dirty. What is he supposed to do? Like he was going to hit him at the waist.
Yeah.
You could have seen that he was starting to lay out and like not continue to go low on. I mean, look, I get the argument on both sides. I wasn't a fan. I thought he could have. I know he's running 20 miles an hour full speed. I hear the argument, but those plays just suck. They absolutely suck. You just don't like to see it. We're not going to break it down any more than that. But those are the kind of players we're not going to spend as much time talking about because let's be real, injuries suck. We don't want to have to dwell on injuries.
Yeah.
And we're going to start with the players who absolutely shocked us this week. The players that absolutely floored us. The players that made zero sense of why they were top 12 at the position this week. The only thing that was normal, it felt like, about this week was Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. The running back won overall this week, 18 for 115, a rushing touchdown, 5 for 72 through the air. 2 touchdowns for Brock Purdy as well, 41.7 PPR fantasy points. He was literally the only normal thing this week. And even at that, 41.7 is absolutely absurd.
Yeah. And what did you see that touchdown he had too, where he fell and he's completely sprawled out and he's got enough time to get up and run? It was ridiculous.
It was absolutely ridiculous. And you dropped an absurd stat on Christian McCaffrey against the Arizona Cardinals. Oh, not just stat, but Christian McCaffrey against Arizona Cardinals this year has just been otherworldly.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. What you
over
include
90
there?
It was 90 fantasy points. He's at over 200 rushing yards, 140 receiving yards, 7 total touchdowns in 2 games against Cardinals this year. Just crazy. It's just ridiculous.
It is absolutely stupid how good that man is. But he absolutely won you this week. Look, if you made the playoffs and you didn't have a first round bye, Christian McCaffrey probably got you into the second round single-handedly. What's even better is if your 1-2 punch this week was Christian McCaffrey and James Cook.
Yeah.
you had to have been feeling really good about yourself because James Cook, the running back, 2 on the week in PPR formats, 25 rushing attempts for 179 yards. That man averaged over 7 yards per carry. 1 touchdown, had 2 receptions, for 42 yards and another touchdown through the air. Was that game more about Dallas's defense or the Buffalo Bills offense for you?
I think it was Buffalo Bills offense. It was just showing that they finally showed a willingness to run while it's working. I think we've seen it so many times where it's like James Cook, 6 yards per carry, but then he gets 11 carries and you're just like, why don't you feed him more? And you see Josh Allen trying to play hero ball, and sometimes it works great and sometimes it doesn't. But this game, they're just like, you know what? This is working. Josh Allen threw the ball 15 times.
Which is crazy.
And they scored 31 points because they just were like, okay, James Cook can run. And it felt like it was 8 yards per carry. I mean, every time he touched the ball, it was just right up the middle, and they just couldn't do anything about
it. The fact that Josh Allen threw for less than 100 yards in this game, because all they did was feed James Cook. Yeah. I mean, there's no reason why this man should be seeing 25 rush attempts, but he's been phenomenal with Joe Brady now as the offense coordinator. Yeah. And I mean, when the Dallas Cowboys defense has more holes in it than my socks, look at, I'm gonna count them up here. That's 1 hole. That's 2 hole. I got another hole down in the heel here. Look, when they have more holes in my socks, I mean, why not feed James Cook the ball relentlessly? Yes, I know I need new socks. Don't make fun of me over on YouTube. Christmas is coming right around the corner. I'm getting new socks soon, I promise you. For those listening to the audio version, that was 3 holes, count them in my socks. But James Cook he was phenomenal. No other way to put it. But nobody expected that against a Dallas Cowboys defense. Nobody expected that. And that's not even the most ludicrous thing. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, 11 for 100, 9 yards an attempt, 1 touchdown, 2 for 8 through the air as well. Adding another score. I mean, you expect that out of Jahmyr Gibbs at this point in the season against a Denver Broncos defense, allowing over 5.5 yards per carry to running backs this year. You expected that kind of game from Jahmyr Gibbs. No real surprises there on that one, but he was absolutely phenomenal in a game that the Lions absolutely walked all over the Denver Broncos.
For sure.
Ty Chandler, running back 4 on the week. This is proof in the pudding right here why everybody was clamoring for Ty Chandler all season long. We all knew it was because Alexander Mattison was better in pass protection. Ty Chandler started improving as the year went on, and now he finally got his time to shine. 23 for 132. 5.7 yards per carry. 1 rushing touchdown. That's more than Alexander Mattison had all year.
Yeah.
Added 3 receptions as well, 25 yards. 24.7, fantasy points this week. You absolutely love to see that from Ty Chandler. He was a guy that we were talking about down the stretch that he had in playoff gem potential to win you your league. And
is that Tyler that brought him up? We gotta give.
It was Ty who brought him up, and now
give Tyler his snaps.
We'll give Tyler his credit, even though he's not here. Typically, I wouldn't allow that, but I mean, it was a great call, and I think we all agreed with that as well. Yep. Where they have the schedule where they could take advantage of it. Now they do get the Lions twice, which will be difficult, but this was a matchup that he should have been able to take an advantage of because the Bengals have allowed efficient runners to take advantage of that this year.
Same with the Packers; they get championship week, so. As long as he can maintain the start, the only worry is that the Vikings are stubborn and go back to Alexander Mattison when he's healthy, which you really hope they go, hey, it was really nice to have someone rush for 130 yards at almost 6 yards per clip. That's hopefully they keep him out there. So, and if they do, like week 16, it might be a little tougher, but if he's the lead back, you got to keep rolling with him.
I think you got to keep rolling with him against Detroit. I 100% agree with that. Kyren Williams continues to be great.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, the Washington Commanders have been atrocious against literally everybody. Their defense ever since the trade deadline when they got rid of Chase Young and Montez Sweat has just been abysmal. 27 for 152. He was one of the biggest buy low candidates at the trade deadline. And if you went out and acquired him, you are rolling in the big bucks right now because Kyren Williams, it doesn't matter the matchup. He may lift you to a fantasy championship at this point.
Yeah. I mean, since he came back healthy, 16, 21, 25, and now 27 rush attempts. And he's week 12 was against the Cardinals and this week against the Commanders. But he had 21 attempts against the Browns and 25 attempts against the Ravens. It just doesn't matter. They just run the ball with Kyren Williams, and he continues to put up fantasy points.
Ready for your stupid stat of the week? Outside of, we'll get to another stupid one down the road.
Ready for it.
Kyron Williams, 7 targets, 5 receptions. You'd think that man would have 30, 35 yards receiving. That man only had 3 yards. He gave you 5 free points just on receptions this week. That's crazy. He could have given you darn near 30 this week. Had he gained any more than 3 yards through the air, that is stupid.
You want to know better stat? That's his highest yards per reception of the last 2 weeks. Last week he had 3 receptions for -1 yard.
Oh my God.
Yardage machine.
I mean, look, in PPR, you'll eat all that up, but my gosh, that talk about points left on the table. What the heck, Kyron? Running back 5, you chump.
Yeah.
Should have been top 3.
Crazy.
Rashad White continues to dominate, though. He's been phenomenal all year. I think he should have been a first-round pick this year if we were to go back and redo it. I snubbed him on our recent shorts video. I put DJ Moore ahead of him, and I gravely regret that. 21 for 89, added a score, 2 for 50 through the air, and another score. I mean, if he's a guy and he's going to continue to get fed, again, he's a guy where it kind of doesn't matter the matchup, because right now he's just getting it done. I mean, I know it's Green Bay, and again, we see that Green Bay is allowed efficient runners this year, but you got to be feeling good if you're a Rashad White manager and you're in the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, he's been getting, his last 4 games, 100 yards, 84, 102, 89. That was something we weren't seeing in the beginning of the year, was that rushing yards. And so that's great to see. And then, the receiving stayed up. He hasn't had a game with less than 2 receptions yet. We've seen him get as high as 7 receptions in a game. So he's got receiving upside, and now he's seeing the groundwork and scoring touchdowns. I mean, there's not much more you can ask for from Rashad White right now.
No, not at all. And I think there is a real case that he might be one of the best values in fantasy drafts this year. I still think Raheem Mostert probably takes the cake, who is a running back 9 this week. But, 15 for 42. It wasn't great. Less than 3 yards per carry on the ground. He scored twice. 2 receptions for 1 yard. Fine, but Rashad White is just doing some incredible things this year. Things that I don't think any of us were anticipating. We anticipated him being probably a top 24 guy, but to call him a top 6 running back this year. Is he the running back 4 on the season? I believe that's where he's at now.
I do want to correct. It's 2 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown is what he had on the week. You had said two receptions for 1 yard.
Oh, sorry. I was looking at I was looking at Raheem Mostert.
Oh, that's my bad. Wow,
No, you're good.
Too.
Nope, you're good. I was looking at Raheem Mostert for that one. I'm like, wait, no, I swear
that's my bad. No, you were right. You were right. Oh my goodness, I am ridiculous.
Few guys ahead of Raheem Mostert though came in at the running back. Oh my God.
Some beautiful names.
Devin Singletary, just like we all thought.
Woohoo!
Fantasy playoff hero for the 3rd straight year. It seems like. 26 for 121, 4.7 yards per carry. Dameon Pierce, Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah.
Singletary also added 4 for 49 through the air as well.
Case Keenum.
We can say this because the video is already out. Dameon Pierce was by far one of the most overhyped players this year.
Oh, yeah. We tried to warn you. He was one of the guys that we were stay away from Dameon Pierce. Like, Devin Singletary is not a bad back, and Dameon Pierce isn't exactly a great back. So
yeah, it's not like Devin Singletary is an all-pro, but like,
no, yeah, and we were like, it could go either way, and now it's going Singletary's way in a huge way when you need Pierce the most.
Right, and considering how inefficient Pierce has been and how efficient Devin Singletary has been, it makes sense that he's getting 26 totes.
Yeah,
when Case Keenum is under center, it makes sense that they resort to the running backs, but my goodness, I did not expect 26 for 121. Just another disgusting name. That's not a stud towards the top of the running back list this week. How about this for a name? Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back 8 on the week. 13 for 37. Man, he stunk. But you know what? He added a score. He caught 4 for 64 and added a score there as well.
That's such a CEH week, too.
It 100% is. It reeks of his start of the year last year, where people are like, you know what? He's putting up 20 a week. Why should I not be playing him? And it's because he's terribly inefficient. And if it's not for these massive receiving yards and another one through the air, you're looking at a nice week from Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but
yeah, not top 7 or top 8.
It's fool's gold that you don't want to chase, but at the same time, if Isaiah Pacheco is going to be out, it's kind of worth chasing.
Yeah, it's Like when he was starting last year, we kept saying it's not going to keep up, not going to keep up. And it wasn't until they made the change off of Edwards-Helaire to put back in Pacheco. So if he's out there, but this is also why people were so in on Pacheco, because they're like, well, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire can do this, then why? But for some reason, it's only CEH that gets these touchdown numbers when he's out there, not Pacheco.
Right, and it's a mystery we'll never know, but for whatever reason, Clyde Edwards-Helaire does have a nose for the end zone over the last 2 years. Wrapping out top 10, James Conner comes in. Look, he looked great against the 49ers. He looked great against them earlier this year, too. 14 for 86, 6 yards a tote, added a score, three receptions as well. You don't love the matchup against the Bears next week, but if he did this against the 49ers, I'm relatively okay starting him next week if you need him to. I know I am, because when you lose Ramondre Stevenson and Jonathan Taylor and sold your soul to get Jamar Chase, that involved a trade with Kyron Williams.
You start getting desperate.
But
he's a good guy to be desperate with.
Right. I would much rather be desperate with him than Gus Edwards and Chuba Hubbard, like I am in another league that I'm still somehow alive in the playoffs in. I can't believe I'm third seed in that league and going to win. Shout out Zamir White, running back 11 on the week. I didn't play him in that league. There was another league though. I played him in my league that I was desperate with James Conner. It was going to be him and Tyjae Spears. And Tyjae Spears wouldn't have been a bad play this week, but I played Zamir White, 17.5 PPR fantasy points, 17 for 69. Added a score, 3 for 16 through the air as well. I mean, as long as Josh Jacobs is out, looks like Zamir White is going to be the number one here.
Yeah, I feel like he's a start, because Antonio Pierce has just shown when he's running the show, they're going to run the ball and try and play good defense. So, I mean, obviously this last week they could do whatever they wanted against the Chargers, putting up 63 points.
No, right.
But yeah, they're gonna run the ball and play good defense, or try and play good defense. So
you're not going to get the Chargers. You're not going to get the Chargers every single week, but this was a good sign for Zamir White if Josh Jacobs does miss more time with his quad injury. Wrapping out our list here, then Jerick McKinnon, the running back 12, and then Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, two relatively normal names. But when you have James Cook as your running back 2, Ty Chandler as the running back 4, Devin Singletary as the running back 7, CEH as the running back 8, and Zamir White as the running back 11. That's just what we all predicted at the start of the season, right? That these guys would be leading you to round 2 in the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah. Well, that's what the best part is. Like the 0 RB squad is going to be like, oh, look at this. This is why you go 0 RB. And then we're going to look at the wide receivers. And there are going to be so many names on the wide receiver list that you're just like, oh, well, it didn't really matter who you drafted sometimes.
Let's move on to that. Let's move on to that, because this is a terrible week to use the 0 RB example, because there were so many wide receiver disappointments.
Yeah.
Considering Jordan Addison was the wide receiver 1 overall in the week. Shout out Jordan Addison, league winner. Not really. He didn't do much when Kirko got injured. But hey, you know what? I'll hold on to what I can here.
Yep.
If Jordan Addison continues to put up 6 for 111 and 2 scores, I don't think he will. 29.1 fantasy points, a wide receiver 1 on the week in PPR formats. I mean, he would end up being a league winner. I don't think this is sustainable, but again, just like we all predicted, Jordan Addison, the wide receiver 1 this week. Jalen Waddle comes in at the wide receiver 2, 8 for 142 with a score, 28.2 fantasy points, just like we all predicted, against the New York freaking Jets in disgusting weather. Just like we all predicted. A massive day, a Tyreek Hill kind of day.
Yeah. I think for the two of them, you kind of realize Jordan Addison makes you excited for next year, because you're like, he looks good with Justin Jefferson out there, right? The pressure's taken off of him. He can get open. Whereas Jalen Waddle, you're like, why can't he be the alpha? Like, I mean, it's great. Like, if you're a Miami fan, you love having both of them. But from a fantasy perspective, when it's just Jalen Waddle, the dude goes absolutely nuts. He did that his rookie season before Tyreek came, and now we see it again. So, I mean, obviously, you're gonna have Tyreek Hill there. Like, nothing's gonna change, but it is kind of like, what could be after, Tyreek's talking about retiring at 30. What could be with Jalen Waddle? So just like the opposite ends of the spectrum for those two receivers.
100%. Terry McLaurin, welcome back. 6 receptions on 12 targets for 141. Added a score as well. I hate that the Commanders still named Sam Howell their starting quarterback for next week. Because when Jacoby Brissett came in, look, it was a Terry McLaurin show.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think Jacoby Brissett is, I mean, he's definitely the safer option, but
at this point,
I don't know. Maybe I just have some bitterness of like, why would you ruin all of my Sam Howell plays this week?
Yeah.
He was well on his way to 37.5 pass attempts. If you wouldn't have yanked him, I understand it looked really bad. I understand he wasn't going to win you the game, but I don't know. Is that the right thing to do with your guy who you're still calling the starter next week to yank him out mid-game? And be like, you know what? Don't do it again. Or you like that just, to me, just reeks of just like spoiled confidence that Sam Howell was playing with throughout this year.
Yeah, for sure.
But good news for Terry McLaurin, 6 for 141. But again, where has this been all year? And then talk about a guy who's been MIA literally all year. And now is a wide receiver 4 on the week. Chris Godwin, 10 for 155. Where did this come from? People were asking me Chris Godwin or like Garrett Wilson was one that I got with them. I'm like, this shouldn't be a question. This should be Garrett Wilson because Chris Godwin has been Mr. Irrelevant all year. And now look at him.
Yeah.
But when you need him the most, when you can never count on him and he's sitting on your bench, there you go. There's 25.5 fantasy points sitting on your bench. I'd be real curious to see how many people in a standard 12-man league, still a PPR 12-man league, actually played Chris Godwin this week. Because I can't imagine it was many. Like, let me pull up his box score real quick because it hasn't been pretty. Is there anything you want to add on Chris Godwin while I try and pull up his box score super quick here?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it really came out of nowhere. And I think it too, like you watch Baker this week. Baker looks good when he throws the ball. The problem is with Baker, it's just making the decision. Like he just takes stupid sacks. And it's just things like those kind of things that hold Baker back. But man, when he just sits there and lets it rip, he looks great. And that was, I mean, Godwin got open today and he was fighting him all over the field. I also think too, it helps the Packers really went after Mike Evans in this game, really tried to make him irrelevant. And because they, Godwin got a lot of one-on-one and he was just able to get open. But it is weird to see this spike week from Godwin after it's just felt we saw it kind of when he came back from injury. All of a sudden he had those high targets and then the targets went away and now here they are again. So, I mean, it doesn't feel like there's much rhyme or reason for it.
Godwin only had 4 games of more than 11 fantasy points this year up until this game. He only had two games of more than 14 fantasy points.
Yeah.
His last 6 games, before week 15, 3.6, 9.4, 9.9, 7.5, 7.9, 10.3, 25.5. Okay, literally out of left field. Yeah. I don't feel bad telling you to say, I mean, do I feel bad? Yes, because holy crap, you definitely should have played him, but
how many people actually started? That's what I would love to see that number. Like, is it like, was he even started in 50% of leagues this last week? I would be shocked if he was, under 12 men. It's just
right. Oh, I mean, and I'm thinking like standard bench, not like this or standard lineup. Your 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 quarterback, defense kicker, whatever you want, 1 flex. Right. I'd be curious to see how many of those leagues Chris Godwin was actually started in this week because I don't think it was many.
No, I would agree.
Cooper Kupp and Amon-Ra St. Brown, 2 guys you aren't surprised to see inside of the top 10. They both had phenomenal weeks. 111 yards for Kupp and a score, 112 for Amon-Ra and a score. I still am baffled that it took 13 weeks for the Kansas City Chiefs to figure out that Rashee Rice is the best wide receiver on their team and that they should continue to feed him with targets.
Yeah, these last
another 9.
Awesome.
Yep, another 4 straight weeks now with 9+ targets. Caught all 9 of them this week for 91 yards and a score, 24.1 fantasy points. He is going to be a guy that wins you your league down the stretch because you know what? If Travis Kelce isn't getting it done, he got nicked up at the end of last game too. This is going to be the Rashee Rice show rest of the season. And man, he has looked really, really, really good. Legitimate case for this year's Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting in drafts next year. What do you do with Rashee Rice, especially if they take another wide receiver in the second round, first or second? I mean, they easily could do that. I mean, they're in a position where they need more weapons. Where do we value Rashee Rice? Like, is it just he's just getting the volume and just taking advantage of it, or is he really, this good on the field? I think he's going to be a fun, or probably not a fun one, a headache next year to try to figure out how high. I mean, this similar to, like you said, with Amon-Ra of what do we do with him? Because he could be amazing, or he, I'm
going to be taking a lot of shots on Rashee Rice next year, I think.
I think so too.
I'm going to love taking, he's going to be drafted right in that, 20 wide receiver 20 to 30 range where Amon-Ra was. And I'm going to be scooping him up everywhere I can in there. Cause I think he's going to be one of the best values. I'm going to go double running back right away. I'll probably, get a wide receiver in the third. And then you're looking at the Rashee Rice range in there, right? Mm-hmm. That 4th, 5th round range. And that's probably where I'm going to look to scoop him up in plenty of drafts because, look, if he's Patrick Mahomes' number 1 and he's clearly making his case to be, and I think he's going to continue to be, that's an incredible value I'm going to get there. And, we're talking about a guy who has top 10 upside. You're going to be drafting in the wide receiver 20 to 30 range. I'm going to love to see where he goes next year because I do have a feeling it's going to be right around that wide receiver 25, 26 range. I'm going to scoop him up every single time in that range.
Yeah, would agree.
Devontae Adams finally looking like his old self in an absolute demolition of the Los Angeles Chargers on Thursday Night Football. 8 for 101 in a score. He's back to his old ways. We hope he keeps that up.
Nice to see.
Noah Brown with Case Keenum this week. How about that? 8 for 82 in a score. 22.2 fantasy points there. What's your level of confidence in Noah Brown going forward? He was a popular question I got this week when I was over on Fantasy Pros TikTok Live doing their Sunday Q&A. What's your level of confidence going forward? Because it sounds like Nico is probably going to be back this week. He was actually fairly close to playing this week, but ultimately didn't. What's your level of confidence in Noah Brown going forward, considering he might get CJ Stroud back too? That's the other thing we have to consider.
I mean, man, I have no idea. Like I feel low just because
he's Noah Brown.
Exactly. And we've seen we had a couple right after Tank Dell went down, we're like, yeah, Noah Brown is gonna be the guy to fill in. He had 2 catches, and it's just so there is that outcome, but then at the same time, this is his 3rd week this year where he's really stepped up. And so, man, I don't know. I mean, the questions are going to be him or Chris Godwin this next week.
Right.
And if CJ Stroud,
I'm going to tell you neither. I'm going to tell you who else do you have on your bench? Do you have Rashee Rice on your bench? Because you should play him.
And with CJ Stroud coming back, man, it's going to be tempting to play Noah Brown. But yeah, I'm not super confident in him the rest of the season, but he could definitely make me eat my words.
He's just going to be such a tough one to figure out because you're going to want to play him. But you're going to have, I'm trying to think of another name that you're going to have on your bench. Here, Amari Cooper was the wide receiver 14 this week. You're going to be deciding between Noah Brown and Amari Cooper next week. Yeah. And I would tell you Amari Cooper, but holy crap. Would you rather have Noah Brown with CJ Stroud or Amari Cooper with Joe Flacco?
Yeah.
I mean,
Deontay Johnson and Mason Rudolph.
Right. Deontay Johnson's another name you're probably going to be looking at.
Yeah. It's going to be gross.
You're going to have to make some of those decisions, and we'll have to take some time to dive into that this week. Yep. T. Higgins, 4 for 61, 2 scores. He's going to be a must start as long as Jake Browning is balling and Jamar Chase is out. I mean, T. Higgins, another great case to be a league winner this year just because of Jamar Chase and his injury. And it's unfortunate, but as a T. Higgins manager, you're feeling pretty great about that.
Well, you're probably not in the playoffs as a T. Higgins manager.
Well, that's all. Touche. You're probably not. That's touche. Deebo Samuel. Look, I'm glad Deebo's making me eat my words, but
it's just
I feel like I want to take half credit here because 4 for 48 doesn't impress me.
Yeah.
There's nothing good about that except for the 2 scores. And I hate to be the guy that's oh, and he doesn't score, he's not good. Oh, and he doesn't do good, he's not good. Yeah, well, of course. But I don't know. I see 4 for 48 and I'm just not blown away by that. And I know he can make things happen with the football in his hands, but look, and I said as we were getting to the playoff heroes point that Deebo Samuel is going to be someone who wins you your league. And so far that's spot on. But I just 4 for 30.
Yeah. It's not
back beautiful. In week 10, 3 for 63. You don't love that.
Yeah, that great Philly game.
Right. He has the big Seattle game, 7 for 79. He has, the Philly game, 4 for 116. I mean, he just absolutely ate them alive. Then he gets, 7 for 149. But, I mean, he's just been on fire with the touchdowns, which is great. He scored 5 in the last 3 weeks. 6 in the last 3 weeks. He scored a rushing touchdown in week 13 as well. But I just... look, he's great. I'm not denying that. It's just one of those where I'm like, man, you look at the box scores in some of these games and you're just like, there was nothing special about that game except for the fact that you found the end zone twice. But we all know Deebo Samuel's that kind of a special player and special talent. It's when he finds the end zone, he's going to give you a big day no matter what.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Kittle and Ayuk later on the other end of the spectrum, and it's really with this offense, it always comes down to, I mean, we say the same thing. It's Christian McCaffrey, and then it's whoever scores between Ayuk, Kittle, and Deebo, because rarely do we see any of them get above 6 receptions in a game when they're all 3 out on the field together, and so it's really just who's going to score this week, and lately it's been Deebo, but the problem is, next week, if the touchdowns go to Ayuk and you got Deebo, you're in trouble. And I'm sitting in that spot as, going into one of these next matchups where I'm like, man, Deebo, I need you to come through again, my guy. Like I need these touchdowns, because if they're not there, I'm going to be sitting on 8 points off of you.
Right, exactly. And that's the fear you run into, but you also can't bench Deebo Samuel because he has been too hot recently. Wrapping out some of the guys we'll talk about here. Josh Palmer, 79-yard score, but outside of that, relatively pedestrian day, 4 for 113. Again, that 1 for 79, and then help me do the mental math here. Is that 39 yards after, or 34 yards after that? So 3 for 34 you're looking at outside of that. I think he's going to be a hot name on waiver wires this week. I would rather add this next player though. Curtis Samuel, 5 for 41, 2 scores, but 9 targets.
What a guy.
I think he should. I mentioned him on my Fantasy Pros Waiver Wire stash video for 2 straight weeks. This kind of a game is coming because he is very clearly the 2 in this offense ahead of Jahan Dotson. And for how much this team throws the football, Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel can be relevant. Or really, it's been Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin can be relevant. But those are the 2 guys that I think are also worth noting. Again, Amari Cooper, Trey Tucker also scored 20-plus this week, wrapping out the top 15. I don't think Trey Tucker's a thing. Are you going to add him anywhere?
No, I'm not going to touch him. But yeah, just thinking about the Commanders, the fact that Terry McLaurin's their best fantasy wide receiver at wide receiver 30, and Sam Howell has thrown the ball, how many more times? 11 more times than Patrick Mahomes, 36 more times than the second place guy or third place guy in attempts, and Jared Goff, and your best wide receivers. It was just crazy.
It's disgusting. I can't believe it. Let's quickly talk about quarterbacks, and I don't want to spend any time on quarterbacks. I don't.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can I just read you the top 12 this week, and can we just vomit and move on?
Yep.
Jared Goff, 5 touchdowns. Good for Jared Goff. Good. I'm happy for you, Jared Goff. Quarterback 2 on the week, Baker Mayfield. He balled. Great, but I guarantee you didn't think he was going to be the quarterback 2 this week.
And a negative matchup.
Oh, my gosh. And how about Aiden O'Connell? Oh, yeah. 20 for 248 and 4. Just like you expected this week. Aiden O'Connell looking like prime Patrick Mahomes out there. Put Tom Brady in a Vegas uniform. Brock Purdy's still great, 16 for 242. His efficiency is absolutely insane. Shout out to his offensive weapons. Yeah. He is not the MVP. Don't at me about that. Okay, quick aside on Brock Purdy. I understand. I don't want to penalize a guy because his weapons are great. It's tough to make the argument for him being the MVP, the most valuable player in the league, when he's not the most valuable player on his team.
Yeah.
That doesn't sit right with me. When you're not the most valuable player on your own team, I don't know how you can be the MVP of the entire league. That's the missing connection here. It's nothing against his talent. It's nothing against his weapons. Should he be in the conversation? Sure. I don't care that he's in the conversation, but to call him the MVP of the entire league, I think is a massive, massive mistake on the part of the league and whoever is voting for the award.
Yeah, I mean, if he's in then Christian McCaffrey's got to be in the same conversation.
100%. Yes. No, Christian McCaffrey's the better candidate than Brock Purdy, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Nothing against Brock Purdy, but I digress. Gardner Minshew, here we go. More disgusting names. Derek Carr. Yeah, you knew he was going to be top 10 this week. Jake Browning. I mean, he's been balling recently, so I guess that's not as big of a surprise. He probably deserves to be there with how well he's been playing. Joe Flacco. Heck yeah. Quarterback 9 on the week.
Throws
quarterback 8. Oh my gosh. Throws 3. Oh my gosh. He's like, I'm trying to make the proper comparison here. That was like
Matt Ryan last year.
It's like Matt Ryan. I was going to go Jameis Winston, right? Where it's just like 3 picks. 3 picks. It's like, doesn't matter. Flacco still balls.
Yep.
Lamar Jackson comes in at 9. No real surprises there. How about Nick Mullins, though? Quarterback 10 this week. And he looked awful.
What is this?
And then Matthew Stafford, again in a favorable matchup with the Commanders. Not surprising.
Mm-hmm. And
your boy Easton Stick, baby. Merry Christmas. You get a hockey stick from Easton.
Yeah.
23 for 257 and 3. In a game they got absolutely walloped in. He was the quarterback 12 this week. Let's take a quick break. That's the top 12 quarterbacks this week. Let's take a quick break. We're going to talk about some of the guys who absolutely blew your playoff chances this week. And I cannot wait to get into some of these names. We'll be right back. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back, and I made a mistake. We didn't even talk about the tight ends. So we're going to breeze through those incredibly quickly. Then we're going to talk about we're going to go on some massive rants this week. Sam Laporta, tight end 1 this week, 5 for 56, 3 scores. It's currently the tight end 1.5 PPR formats.
Ridiculous.
He is phenomenal. He is the next big thing at tight end. He's another one where I think he's probably going to go too early next year. I'm really nervous he's going to be the new Travis Kelce, where people are just going to draft him in the first round, early second round. I'm not going to be too interested at that price point, but he's going to be an interesting one next year. He's been phenomenal this year, though. That's not to take anything away from him this year. He has been nothing short of phenomenal, and he's in the perfect offense that, frankly, needed a weapon like Sam Laporta. David Njoku, 14 targets, 104 yards, and a score. As long as Flacco's at quarterback, continue to play that man because David Njoku's on fire. What's disappointing, though, is that... Sorry, can I give a wholesome aside?
Would love it.
I just got a text on my phone. So my wife and I are currently in the process of looking at apartments. And we're waiting on a response from our landlord. I open up my phone. I see a text from a 651 number that has come from our landlord. And I look, and it's my coach from Orange Theory texting me.
Oh. Letting you know to get back in the gym?
No, I've been in the gym. I've been grinding. Are you kidding me? I don't have any results to truly show for it right now, but we're making progress, okay? That was wholesome. He just texted me. I don't actually know what it says. He said, "Hey," it says, "Coach Robin, it's been great having you in class."
That's funny.
Celebrated on my 1 month. Woohoo.
Oh, gotta love it.
Gotta love it. David Njoku, he's been phenomenal, though. You know what I hate? When Ty and I were talking about playoff schedules, we were going to talk about tight ends. I brought up David Njoku, and I almost said, Ty, I got to talk about David Njoku, because you know how much I love to talk about tight ends.
It's weird.
And I didn't. Nice.
Got him.
Wish I had like a round of applause for you on that one. That one was well timed. I really wanted to talk about David Njoku, and then of course I didn't because I wanted to keep the show moving. But he's been phenomenal. He has been incredible. Trey McBride, he's that dude as well. 10 for 102. Must start every single week. Trey McBride is the only option that Arizona Cardinals passing offense you can trust. And Hunter Henry, back-to-back weeks of 19 fantasy points. He is worth a look. It's disgusting.
It is.
It's so disgusting, but it's worth a look if you're absolutely desperate at tight end. Isaiah Likely caught a score as well. Here you go. Let's wrap out the rest. You ready for these names? Tucker Kraft, tight end 6. Elijah Higgins. Can you name the team that he plays for?
Nope.
Only because you can see it in the document. Arizona Cardinals. 4 for 44 and a score, 14.4. Michael Mayer was in there as well. Cole Kmet, TJ Hawkinson at 10. Juwan Johnson, Jake Ferguson. Mo Alley Cox. Oh my gosh. My favorite tight end ever. I don't care that he went 2 for 21 and caught a touchdown, but that's my guy right there. Mo Alley Cox. I love that man. And then Tanner Hudson. 9.9 fantasy points at the tight end 14. Okay, let's keep going though, because we gotta talk about these terrible performances this week. I know you have quarterbacks listed first in the doc here. We're starting with running backs though.
It's fine with me.
Arthur Smith. What are we doing? Here's all I'm going to say. I don't think it's a coincidence that you lost to the Carolina Panthers and you fed Tyler Algier more touches, nearly double Bijan Robinson touches. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. I thought you were turning things around, man. I had hope. I did. I really did. I thought you finally figured it out. Last week was icing on the cake. It's like, hey, you know what? Our offense is really clicking when we get our best players involved. Nope. No. I didn't feel right about it last week. How more fantasy points?
I feel so bad for people with him on their fantasy team because they're finally feeling hopeful. They're trusted in him, and then he drops a 0.4 on you. Oh, ridiculous!
I know we can't judge a man's career by fantasy football metrics, but if we did that, he would have been fired long ago. But this is a fireable offense, honestly, if we're judging by fantasy football standards.
Yeah.
You say David Montgomery was running back 22 this week, and he only had 10.2 fantasy points.
Yes.
I mean, and what stinks is that, if David Montgomery scores a touchdown, you're feeling a lot better about his performance. You're not necessarily let down by 10.2, considering that was the running back 22. That's still a running back 2 in 12-man formats, but you didn't feel great about it.
Yeah.
Travis Etienne only gave you 9.9 this week.
And he was running back 24. A top 24 running back didn't even hit double-digit PPR fantasy points this week.
Which is just absurd.
That's so gross.
It's so gross, man. It's like the tight end position almost. You feel like there's not many. And there's clearly, 15 good ones that'll give you, 15 plus, but considering you need 2 in your lineup, that's feeling a lot like the tight end position, honestly.
Yep.
There's double the need there.
I do want to say everyone after Travis Etienne, both Tyler Goodson and Trey Sermon scored more fantasy points than everybody else on this list.
Tyler who?
Tyler Goodson. Both of them are Colts running backs. Both backup running backs for the Colts scored more points than everyone left on this list.
Devon Achan's one of those names. Well, he got slapped with the questionable tag.
Yep.
Like day before kickoff. I told people that on the live. They're like, Devon Achan or I got a lot of Devon Achan, Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it didn't make too much of a difference because Aaron Jones only scored like 1 point more than Devon Achan. But that's why I told people, I go, honestly, I don't think you can confidently start Devon Achan this week. If you have a guy you feel more confident in, I would play him because the fact he got hit with the questionable tag day before kickoff, that was a terrible sign for me. And Raheem Mostert dominated. Austin Eckler, 7.8 fantasy points, even in a down game with no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams, where he should have been involved in the passing attack. Only muster 7.8 fantasy points. He's just... I'll eat my words on Austin Eckler. I thought he should have been drafted ahead of Christian McCaffrey this year, and I'm an idiot.
What's hurting?
I'll say it.
Yeah, it was ugly. I mean, he at least saw 6 targets, but he had 5 carries for 9 yards. I mean, just
Tony
not
Pollard.
good.
Just not good. Tony Pollard, 7.7. I don't know what in the world happened against the Bills. They just...
Yeah.
They're not as good of a team on the road, the Dallas Cowboys, but man, these are guys that, were Tony Pollard was on a nice little streak there. You're starting to feel confident in him again. You don't hate the matchup with the Bills, but
yeah.
Oh my goodness, 7.7. You were very disappointed in that this week.
Yep.
Derek. Oh, we'll just jump to Derrick Henry. I brought up his name. 5 fantasy points on the week against a Houston Texans defense that he has absolutely dominated throughout the course of his career. I think a lot of people are they're joking about Derrick Henry's total yardage this week. What, 10 total yards? Is that what he had?
Yep. He's the first. I think he's the first running back to have 20 touches in a game and only 10 total yards.
Man had half as many yards as he did touches.
Yes.
That should be the other way around. He should have
4 receptions.
Half as many touches as he does the yards. And like, that's a poor day. Don't get me wrong, 20 for 40 is a poor day, but like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think that says more about the Houston Texans run defense, though. That Derrick Henry just can't come in and impose his will against them. I think it says a lot more about their defense than it does Derrick Henry.
For sure.
Saquon Barkley. Apparently the New York Giants don't like to win football games because they don't want to feed their best player the ball. How many rushing attempts did Saquon have?
He had 9 for 14. 9 for 14.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely killed you this week.
Yeah.
Breece Hall, though. Hey.
He never
2.8 fantasy points on the week. I mean, a guy, you'd think the guy would be able to rack up PPR fantasy points in a game they're losing by 30.
Yeah.
And look, Trevor Siemian in the game, safety valve check down, 1 reception. The perfect scenario for Breece to just feast, to have 5 receptions for 40-something yards, find the end zone hopefully. Abysmal day for Breece Hall. I told a lot of people to start him, and I mean, let's be real. This was just an awful week for stud running backs. Yeah. Like, we could go back to that list that we talked about and how many absurd names were inside of the top 12 this week.
Yeah, I just think, the Breece thing doesn't make sense. Last 4 weeks, 6, 9, 8, 9 targets. All right, so now we got a game where we're behind. Our quarterback can't do anything. Let's give him 2 targets. I mean, like, what are we doing? The saving grace for Breece is he does play Washington next week,
right? Which is a must. It's still a smash start. That is a smash start. You start Breece Hall in that game.
But man, to see 6 carries for 12 yards and then you get 2 targets and 1 catch, it's disgusting. And then, I'm really glad that in the league that I have Breece, that I had a bye this week. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes, I'm very glad. I would be very glad in your shoes as well, as I was sitting with Jahmyr Gibbs and Rachaad White. And I'm like, man, I wasted 2 25-plus point performances right there. But I digress because my wide receivers did not do me any favors this week either. But Javonte, Najee, probably the only other 2 ones worth mentioning. Javonte had 4 points on the week. Najee with 1.3. I mean, the Steelers stink. No other way to put that. Let's move on to wide receivers, yeah?
Yep.
DJ Moore. Tough matchup with Denzel Ward. 9.2 fantasy points on the week. You're hoping for more after 3 straight weeks of 20-plus. Right. Now, 9.2 isn't like the dagger in the back that Bijan is at 0.4. But again, this was one where I had a lot of Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore questions in. And I'm glad I told people Jalen Waddle because Mike McDaniel just manufactured him touches close to the line of scrimmage in a rainy game and when Tyreek Hill is out. But he was one this week that a lot of people had questions on, and you were probably better off sitting him this week. But if you did play him, 9.2 doesn't kill you, but you were definitely hoping for, another 15, 16-point game. Calvin Ridley, 8.9. Nothing new under the sun there. Can't figure out when to play him. There's no rhyme or reason to it anymore. Zay Jones was on the field.
He's another guy put on our overhyped team. He was that guy. He was the training camp video this year. You saw that where he comes out after Christian Kirk and he looks so much faster. And he has finished outside the top 40 twice as many times as he's finished inside the top 20.
It's just ridiculous.
It's awful.
For a guy who was getting as much hype as he did.
Yeah. 4th round pick. Oh.
Yeah, he's absolutely killed you this year. Stephon Diggs, talk about killing you the last 6 weeks. My goodness.
Yeah.
4 out of his last 5, he has gone under 10 fantasy points. 8.8 on the week. And look, like Josh Allen only threw for
right.
Josh Allen, I mean, it doesn't help when he only threw for 94 yards in this game. It was basically a game script thing, and I think Stephon Diggs will take a win in that scenario. But man, he has absolutely killed you in the latter half of the season. Brandon Ayuk, 6.7 on the week. Again, he catches a touchdown, you're not really complaining, but Debo took both of those this week. There's just so many mouths to feed in this 49ers offense.
Mm-hmm.
And for how quickly they put up points and get ahead on people, the volume just doesn't have to be there every single week. These guys are efficiency plays and touchdown plays for the most part.
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson, 5.9. Once a target hog, was not as much in this game. Correct me if I'm wrong. This was his lowest target total in like 5 weeks, was it not?
Let me pull it up. Of course, I moved my spot. I had it. Yeah, I think it was. Let's see. Where was he?
I'm pulling him up right now as well.
That's on me. That was my job.
Nope,
Garrett Wilson had only 4 targets in this one. I mean, obviously, when you lose Zach Wilson, you have to go to Trevor Siemian, and you don't, you go from bad to probably just as bad, but a different bad. In poor weather, it's gross.
Allen Lazard had more targets.
Yeah.
Xavier Gibson had more targets.
Ugh.
Randall Cobb had 3 targets to Garrett Wilson's 4. I mean,
yeah. Jalen Ramsey.
I mean, this is what happens when Trevor Siemian is in. But a guy who was once a consistent volume play, plug your nose and just play him, did not pay off this week. Drake London. We already ranted about Arthur Smith, DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham Jr., Zay Flowers, a few other names that you might have started in the flex this week, and they did not lift you to a victory. They didn't even come close to doing that.
Yeah, that Flowers one kills you. He was on that, two straight 20-point games, was seeing a ton of volume, and then this last game, and Jacksonville's been leaking points to everybody fantasy-wise, and, just for him to get you 1.7, that one's a killer, because that one's one of those, where you're questioning over some of those guys we talked about earlier of like Chris Godwin's, Rashee Rice, I'm sure there was a lot of people. Those were the
guys who were pondering this week.
I'm sure a lot of people started to say Flowers of Rashee Rice or, Amari Cooper and, and now you're sitting here, you got 1.7. Well, those guys are probably winning you the week. So yeah, that is the tough part about the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah. I think you're onto something. You're not onto something. You brought up a good point there with Zay Flowers, because he was one this week too. I got a lot of questions on and the Zay Flowers or Rashee Rice's, and I'm glad I leaned Rashee Rice over Zay. But again, Zay's one where it's like, he's been the guy 20 plus in 2 straight games, like you said. Great matchup with the Jaguars, and just didn't need to in that game that they won decently, easily. Let's do quarterbacks and tight ends here as we wrap out the episode. Josh Allen, 16.2. Again, he didn't necessarily kill you, but
yeah,
let's acknowledge this though.
A week.
Yeah, right. When he only gives you 94 passing yards, though.
Yeah, he's lucky at that.
I mean, 16 point. You know what? I'll take 16.2 for that low of an output.
100%.
Rushing touchdown helped him out there, but you know what? I'll take what I can get with Josh Allen there this week. Kyler Murray, 15.3. He's a roller coaster, man. He looked pretty good in his first 2 games back, and now it's just like, oh boy, I don't want to watch Kyler. I just don't.
Yeah, and I don't know how many people are starting him against the 49ers this week either. It's just he was one that maybe, if you took the chance of starting him, you weren't like burned by it, but at the same time you're like, I wanted more.
Right, you definitely wanted more. You wanted more from Trevor Lawrence as well, 14.7. I mean, this has just kind of been the story of Trevor Lawrence this year. He's only giving you glimpses of like, oh, you know what? There's the elite top 7 guy I drafted this year, and it was not this week, not in the week you needed him, and hopefully you went with a different option this week. I'm sure a lot of people were probably asking the Joe Flacco or Trevor Lawrence question. I actually think I told somebody to play Joe Flacco over Trevor Lawrence this week. I don't remember that exactly, but like those are some of the lineup decisions you're making at this point in the fantasy playoffs. And Trevor Lawrence did you no favors.
No flavors.
He did no flavors. He didn't give you cherry, blueberry. He didn't give you nothing. If you played him this week. Tua Tagovailoa. I don't want to say this was one you could have read like a book against the Jets. In a poor weather game against a really good defense that just doesn't allow passing yards to the quarterback. I know Jalen Waddle had himself a day, but outside of Jalen Waddle, nobody outside of him and Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert really did all that much in this game. 13 fantasy points on the week. He definitely did you no favors, to get the phrase correct this time, in the playoffs this week.
Yeah, I mean, that's the tough thing with Tua, right? That's something we acknowledge coming in. His day from an NFL standpoint, 21 of 24, almost a 90% completion percentage, 224 yards and a touchdown. No interceptions, no fumbles.
Nothing.
I mean, he looked good. It's just that's not going to get you fantasy points, right? I mean, that's
right.
Right.
If he's not rushing.
Yeah, exactly. 13 fantasy points. So whereas like we talk about Josh Allen had what do you have? 118 total yards, and he scored 16 fantasy points. I mean, that's just the difference when you have that rushing upside versus when you don't.
Prime example right there. Speaking of guys with a rushing upside that just didn't take advantage of it, Justin Fields 11.6. That hurts this week because 2 weeks ago he had 18 rushing attempts. Correct me if I'm wrong.
3 weeks ago now. 3 games.
3 weeks ago. 3 games ago now.
Yep.
18 rush attempts, and now just not using his legs in the same way. And you certainly don't trust him as a passer entirely.
Yeah.
Not against a Brown defense that just got Denzel Ward back this week too. So that one stinks if you had Justin Fields, and then oh my gosh, Dak Prescott. Oh, he was looking like the league winner we all wanted him to be, and wouldn't you know, leave it to the Cowboys in December to disappoint you.
Yeah.
Oh, that stinks as a Dak Prescott manager. I'm glad I had a bye with Dak because that would have stung this week because my dynasty team, Dak is my only healthy quarterback right now. I have no choice but to play Dak. Kirk Cousins, IR. Anthony Richardson, IR. Trey Lance, hey, I got Dak Prescott's hand.
Hey, there you go. As long as if he gets hurt.
But I digress. Yeah. And Trey Lance has been healthy scratching most of these games too. Yeah. Cooper Rush has been the backup.
The hard thing with the worst thing about Dak is at least Josh Allen played Dallas, Kyler Murray against San Francisco, Trevor Lawrence against Baltimore, Tua against the Jets, and then Justin Fields against Chicago. At least those guys you knew had bad matchups. You see Dak getting to play Buffalo, and you're like, this should be a bar. I mean, you're probably feeling the same way with Josh Allen, but at least it's a decent defense. Dak, you're like, he should be able to light this team up. Like he
be another 20+ point week.
And then he drops you 7. He's outside the top 30 quarterbacks this week. I mean, it's just like
I couldn't believe that. Outside of the top 30.
Man,
outside
that
the top 30.
That one hurt.
Could have started 29, 30 other quarterbacks.
Ugh.
That's abysmal. So if you started Dak this week, our condolences to you.
Yeah.
And you didn't have a first round bye because I say that I started Dak, but it doesn't matter. I had a first round bye. Let's wrap it up with the tight ends, though. It's Travis Kelce, 7.8 fantasy points again. And looks like he got injured at the end of that. At the end of the game, something with his knee. It seemed like.
Yeah.
He hasn't been good.
No,
I'll just say that he hasn't been good.
No, it's been a long time since you've had a game from Kelce where you're like, yes, I'm glad I drafted him, with that in that first round. It's
right.
He's another one next year. Man, are people, we're going to be people are going to be freaking out. Has he fallen off the cliff? Is he, it'll be interesting to see where he goes, like compared to Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, I mean, all these guys, Trey McBride, even TJ Hawkinson, like where does he fall in that range? Because he is 34. Like, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that he is slowing down, but at the same time, it's like, is he actually, or has it just been an off couple of weeks where teams are finally starting to go, hey, we're going to make someone else beat us that's not Travis Kelce?
And it's Rashee Rice. And hopefully, my hope is that teams are like, oh, you know what? But yet the Chiefs haven't been putting up a ton of points either.
Yeah.
I mean, they played the Patriots this week, for crying out loud. Like, that's not a difficult team to beat. They should put up 27 against the Patriots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Kelce at least
against the Patriots.
Yeah, Kelce did at least see 7 targets. So I mean, that's only 28 yards, but at least he did see 7 targets. He's still being used like Travis Kelce.
George Kittle, 7.4 fantasy points on the week. Again, Deebo Samuel scored all the touchdowns there. I won't beat a dead horse. That's the San Francisco 49ers, but not really much of a surprise if Deebo is going to continue to get the touchdowns and Brandon Ayuk continues to see volume as well. And if the 49ers are going to mop the floor with teams like they are against the Cardinals and the Seahawks, then there's just not a need for George Kittle. It's about as simple as that.
Yep.
Evan Ingram, 6.8 fantasy points. You're hoping for a better day there. He has been a volume machine. Definitely let you down after a big week against the Cleveland Browns last week. Kyle Pitts, nothing new under the sun, 6.7. He stunk. Just stinks when he gave you a really good week. And then you got, there's kind of a dud afterwards. I don't think many people actually played Kyle Pitts this week.
No, I just wanted another reason to bury Arthur Smith for not using his weapons correctly. One of my favorite stats on Kyle Pitts. He has less double-digit fantasy points this games this year than Tyler Conklin. Tyler Conklin with Zach Wilson and whoever else they have at quarter, Tim Boyle, has more double-digit fantasy outings than Kyle Pitts. Your 4th overall pick is losing out to Tyler Conklin. I mean, that is just nothing against Tyler Conklin. I mean, we love him in Minnesota, but he should not be the receiving threat you're comparing Kyle Pitts to at this point.
Pat Freiermuth also stunk this week.
Yep.
Hopefully you didn't play Pat Freiermuth. He had just one good week, and it just smelled fluke all over it. And those weren't points I necessarily really wanted to chase after. And hopefully you didn't either. And hopefully you didn't play Pat Freiermuth this week.
Some of us had no choice because we lost Mark Andrews late in the year.
That's
scrambling.
Touche. You're welcome.
Yeah, that's I felt that one this week. Luckily, like I said in that league, I did have Christian McCaffrey, but I felt that Pat Freiermuth and Derrick Henry both on that team, and Trevor Lawrence. But sometimes when you got a guy who can just cover up all those holes, it feels pretty good.
Yeah. Anything we missed on this episode?
I don't think so. I mean, this week you really got to watch the injury reports because there is a lot of. I mean, we talked about Josh Jacobs. You talk about Jamar Chase. I mean, all these like big name guys that you're like, are they playing? Are they not? What does that mean? Even Alexander Madison. So what does that mean for Ty Chandler? It's just there's a lot of guys that you're going to need to watch the injury report for of whether they're starting or their starters coming back. It's going to be a mess this week.
Yeah, you're absolutely going to have to watch the injury report. If you watched our waiver video, if you haven't watched our waiver video yesterday that came out, that Ty put out, make sure you go do that because there are quite a few guys on that list where you're like, the running back's injured. I'm not sure if he's actually going to play or not.
At this point, you got to pick him up.
At this point, you got to pick him up because, and frankly, if you're a Christian McCaffrey manager, you better have Jordan Mason or Elijah Mitchell on your team. If you're a Tony Pollard manager, you better have Rico Dowdle on your team. If you're a Travis Etienne manager, you better have Dearness Johnson on your team. I mean, with how many injuries we are seeing, there is no reason to not have your handcuff running back stash because, as we said, the Zamir Whites, the Clyde Edwards-Helaire's, the Jerick McKinnons, these guys are creeping into top 10s.
Yeah.
That should be these other guys, but DeAndre Swift and Kenny Gainwell is going to be a perfect one. I have no clue. We're recording this before the Eagles game tonight, but I'm going to pray right now that something doesn't happen to DeAndre Swift, but he is another perfect example where if he goes down, Kenny Gainwell, my gosh, he's going to become a league winner in weeks 16 and 17. So watch the injury report. Please roster your handcuff for running backs because these are guys that could save your season. I firmly believe these handcuff running backs, even if you don't have them, they could save your season.
Yeah, even if you're holding on to guys like if you still got Quentin Johnson on your team, even Jamison Williams, at this point, you're not going to start them anyways. Even if they have a week they pop off, you're not going to start them. So if you got wide receivers like that, Rashad Bateman, Treylon Burks, I'm just trying to think of, even like Dontavian Wicks, who had 15 points this week. Unless you're like actually considering starting him, you're just not going to. So drop him in case to pick up like that backup running back that you would need to start if one of your starters went out at this point in the year, right? You're not waiting on a stash anymore.
Right. This is not us saying, if you're like that thin at wide receiver and you absolutely need to play Dontavian Wicks, like if you need to absolutely play these guys, like that, then please go ahead and play them. Don't drop starters to pick up handcuffs. Right. But yeah, if there's anybody who's your wide receiver 4 or 5 that isn't going to crack your starting lineup, I mean, I'm in a league where my top 3 wide receivers, well, I guess now I got to pivot. My top 3 wide receivers are Amon-Ra, AJ Brown, and it was Jamar Chase, but Chris Olave is my wide receiver 4. But that's a league where I'm only rostering 4 wide receivers. Yeah, and I'm rostering handcuffs everywhere else because I don't need more wide receivers outside of those 3. So that is 100% wise advice. watch the injury report, roster those guys who are sitting behind guys who are dealing with injury, because they might just be the playoff heroes that you actually need this year. Ty Chandler is another example of that we didn't mention there. But thanks for tuning into this episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel as well. If you're watching over on YouTube, turn on that notification bell. You'll be alerted when all of our new videos go up, everything from podcasts to weekly videos to everyday shorts. We have so much content coming out for you. Literally, the entire season, we have not stopped. We have not missed a day. The only day we miss is Sunday, and we go live on Sundays. We have not missed a day. Actually, I think we did miss a day or two in there, but for miscellaneous reasons, travel, we weren't actually able to be in front of a camera and chat with you all. But there's so much content there. Make sure you don't miss out on that. Same if you're listening to the audio podcast, we appreciate your support over there. Make sure to leave a nice little review over there as well. We enjoy hearing from you all. And turn on that notification bell, subscribe so you know when all of the new podcasts drop. FF Fellas over on Twitter, the FF Fellas over on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. I am at Lucas Wensel on X. Got to change that here on our overlays. Amon-Ra, FFF for Cameron. We will be back later this week. We will break down Week 16, Round 2 of the playoffs, all the start-sit decisions that you need to make in those matchups. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you next time. Deuces.